welcome to Coffee with Christy and Crew. I'm Christy Belt Grossman. I'm the CEO and owner of Ops Boss Coaching, where we coach all things operations in entrepreneurial businesses. And I am super excited to have back, not for the first time, not for the second time, but for the third time, our most popular guest, probably since we started Coffee and Christy several years ago. And that is Nora Simpson. And Nora is going to talk with us about double your sales by conquering distraction, overwhelm, and burnout, which I think we are all experiencing to the nth degree. But before we get started, Nora, I'm going to have you introduce yourself, and then we are going to jump in.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me, Christy. And this is going to be an intimate experience. Today, we're going to just have a really deep talk about these things, but I'm really looking forward to hearing not just from you and Davina today, but also from all of our friends and buddies out there in internet TV land who are going to join us, who are going to join us and join into the conversation in an asynchronous way, because I know that this is an issue for all of us. And I'm really looking forward to connecting with everybody about it, because the research is there. And the good news is there is hope. The research about the problem is there. You're not alone. There is hope. You wanted me to introduce myself, so I'll just say a little bit. I am born and raised in New Orleans, Louisiana. I live in New York City with my two beautiful little boys. I started my company 15 years ago using a neuroscience-based methodology that I developed by basically stealing great ideas from lots of different sources, including anti-poverty work in Africa, Latin America, and South Asia, including civil rights-based work in New Orleans, where I'm from, including neuroscience and trauma understandings, and including working with hundreds of business leaders in a previous career as an executive recruiter, and sort of smushing all the neuroscience and the people community building and the business strategy together. And now, I'm blessed to say that I've worked with 700 companies since starting my business 15 years ago. I have 2 books out and I'm writing my 3rd book. So
That's awesome. We'll link to that for sure. So send me those links.
for
I'm
sure.
super excited about you coming because we hear from our clients day in and day out about overwhelm and burnout. But I feel like those aren't even strong enough words to talk about what we're experiencing now. And I know that last time you came and joined us, it was eye-opening for me, and I took some great things away. So I'm going to let you, normally on Coffee with Christy, those of you who are listening back or who normally join us, Coffee and Christy is normally kind of a coach's mastermind, where it's not a class, we're not teaching, we're just sort of brainstorming challenges and solutions and things like that. And every once in a while we do something really special. So that's what I'm going to do with Nora. And Nora actually is going to walk us through just as much as we can do in this short period of time. And for those of you who are listening back, Nora is one of our keynote speakers at the Ops Boss Leader Retreat, which Davina, I think you're going to be attending, so you'll get some more of her, and I'm super excited about that. But I'm going to just stop now, and we're just going to plunge right in. So let's go.
Love it. Yay. Okay. So I'm going to show you guys some new statistics. Some of you who've seen me talk before, you may remember some of the older statistics. So look, we know that workers are stressed. We know that people are experiencing higher levels of burnout and stress. There aren't numbers. I love numbers. Anytime I put something on a slide, I like to have a number for it. There aren't numbers for quiet quitting. There aren't numbers for layoffs and, just confusion about what's going on in the workplace. But everyone I talk to, and I talk to a lot of people each day, it's amazing to me how confused and overwhelmed everyone feels. And I think it happens at every level. I mean, I give a lot of talks, and I was giving a talk to a group of chief HR officers a couple of months ago. And I sat down with some of them after, and they said, we tried to work with our senior executives on some of these issues just at the executive level. And they just accepted that what they have to trade for the money at that level is total misery, and that work just owns them, and that's what they're being paid for. And it's just no one wants this anymore. And it's happening at every level. So I want to help you understand how not alone you are. wherever you are in the world, as a small business owner, working for a small business, big business, whatever you're doing, you're not alone. And then I want to talk about solutions. Does that sound good?
That sounds great. And you guys feel free to use the chat as well. And I'd love to know those of you who are live on the call versus listening back, if you guys would just type in the chat. I know most of you are on a real estate team. What percentage of your team is feeling the way Nora just described?
Ooh, chat. I love chat.
We've got
100%. Thanks, Kate.
100%,
Bethany says
50-50,
50-50. All right.
100%.
I've definitely got questions for Bethany. So we've got 2 votes for 100% and 1 vote for 50-50
50-50, and I would say 100% on our team.
on your team.
Yep.
Well, that's really important information, Christy. And we should talk more about all kinds of, offline. Let's talk more about what we do, because I really do believe that there are really particular ways to solve this. And I have solved it by the grace of a lot of good gree in the universe. The other thing to remember is that we are losing just a lot of money and productivity. Like, it's not just that people feel bad, it's that this might be the number one issue for everyone's bottom line. So it's not just good, people management, it's good business to look at this. And I was just shocked when I read this survey that 63% of people with jobs of some kind in the United States are willing to quit their job today to avoid work-related stress. That's how unhappy people are. We have lots of resentment. It's really fascinating to watch how people are, looking for enemies, looking for negativity when they go into the experience of this day-to-day grind. That, the brain is a heat-seeking missile. It's gotta have some reason for this pain. And it's much easier to just blame people that are not our favorites, who are kind of nearby, than to do all this research and find out what's actually the root cause. So today we're going to really uncover that root cause. And I hope that you all really get to, at least in this moment today, I want you to gain enormous compassion for yourselves, as well as compassion for your colleagues, because every single person is enslaved to this right now. There's no one person doing it to other people. We're all enslaved to this really particular experience in our society. And it's been very well documented. Basically, in 2005, a consulting firm called BaseX started documenting how productivity was being lost just from the introduction of email from the late 90s to 2005. By 2015, the estimate was that folks were, losing about 6 hours a day, give or take. But by 2021, and I'm sure some of you have purchased some of these books, right? We've got a little productivity industrial complex now, right? We've got so many books about productivity. It's like what diets were in the 1980s, right? Now everybody wants to write about productivity. And I was just, because I'm writing my 3rd book right now, I was just inside this book, this 2021 book, and the 72-minute study was actually a study taken in 2018 across 50,000 people's office computers. And it wasn't even looking at their phones. It just said that in the office computer, the employees went no more than 72 minutes across the day without having an alert or an urgent message or something show up across the day. And that was 2018. That was 6 years ago. So it's worse now. What were you going to say, Christy? I feel like you were going to say something.
No, that's exactly what I was going to say. I can't even imagine the number of minutes, how much that has shrunk down since that time.
Yeah, it's just a constant. It's almost like everyone's job has become constant communication, and there's so little time for getting real work done. And it's just insane. So, I won't go too deep into this stuff. I just want to do a few reminders. I know you guys have seen some of this before, but it's just so important to understand what it is that these interruptions do to our brains. In 2012, the research showed, but one of my favorite researchers in this area is called Gloria Mark. Her big book came out in 2022. We'll talk more about her in a minute. But in 2012, she did research that showed that even in 2012, our brains had become so retrained with all these interruptions that we would literally people just invent reasons to interrupt each other, even when there's nothing extra to talk about. And so the average length of work before interruption by a colleague, 7.8 minutes. The average length of work before interruption by self, like, oh, I forgot to call the plumber, right? 8.6 minutes. Interruption recovery time, 32 minutes on average if you get interrupted by a colleague, 34 minutes if you interrupt yourself, and there's a 30% chance you won't even resume the task that day at all. So you've seen these numbers before. Go ahead,
Just
Chris.
lived this afternoon. I will tell you, I'm like, here I am, the coach, and I'm failing forward so fast in this area. I spent this afternoon 2 hours writing a blog post that should have taken me 20 to 30 minutes because I had my phone sitting here and my husband, who's the CFO of our company, was texting me about certain expenses and where they should go in QuickBooks. And then I didn't finish it.
Yeah. I mean, it's so epidemic right now. So this is the Gloria Mark book that came out in 2022. I love Gloria Mark. I love all of these researchers, but all they offer you is individual ideas. They're like, oh, try hiding from your coworkers for 2 hours a day. There's actually a book. I have a screenshot of it later in this presentation, and it's called Productivity Ninja. And it even talks about like, what do ninjas do? Ninjas hide. You've got to hide from people. And I'm like, no, that's not actually going to be a way to solve this problem in a long-term way. But what I love about Gloria Mark's writing is that her research is so specific. And she was able to get into computers at Microsoft and Cisco and like really be in these huge corporations and take huge data sets across tens of thousands of employees and really give us information about who we are as a workforce. And, in 2004, when she started this research, the average length of time people stayed on one application while they were doing something was about 2.5 minutes. And in 2022, that number had gone down to 40 seconds. It's terrifying. So, okay. The other piece here is that even when we're not experiencing a work sphere interruption, which is to say, Christy, your husband is texting you and you're like, okay, stop blogging. Okay, no, that goes here and this goes there and right? Like that's the work sphere interruption. Even if it's just a tiny interruption, like, oh, my phone is dinging and I'm giving a presentation. Yeah, I forgot to put it on silent, right? That's 4.4 seconds that just happened. That triples my error rates. So even when you're trying to actively ignore things, they are slowing you down because the more you have error rates, the more time stuff takes. And one thing that I think is really profound about this particular study is that when Eric Altman and his research team were designing it, at first they were just going to have folks do like this very simple sequencing thing, having to like putting letters in alphabetical order, very simple stuff just to see, we're just testing an very minor interruption. They had a control group with no interruptions, and then they had one experimental group with this one 4.4 second interruption. And then at the last minute, they said, we have all these extra people registered. Let's create another group and we'll do a 2.8 second interruption because we're pretty sure that the human brain can't tell the difference between no interruption and 2.8 second interruption. And that was their hypothesis. And they were shocked that the human brain can absolutely feel the difference on a 2.8 second interruption in a way that probably was absent from their perception, right? People are designing this study going, oh yeah, if my phone rings and I put it on silent, my error rates don't go up. Well, the science begs to differ. So they were in the writing that they did about the study, they were like, we were shocked. It turns out. So basically, task switching is what these interruptions get our brains to do. it burns our energy, it burns our strength, it burns our stamina. It's bad for our health. When I give this talk for people who don't sit at desks, when I give this talk for security guards or people who are, not necessarily knowledge workers, the reason I ask them to get off their phones is that I want them to live long enough to meet their grandchildren. Because it really does compromise our health, the way we're checking our phones at this point. And 83% of American workers are experiencing what they're perceiving as work stress. And they're perceiving it as compromising their physical and mental health in a really big way. And I'm not saying that their experience isn't real. I'm just saying that we have this big, fire in the middle of the bed, and we're all lying on the bed and wondering, like, who's holding a heater to my head? What's going on? Right? That it's this really shared experience. The last big study that I want to share with you about this topic, around phones and interruptions, I have a few other studies to share with you, is the Adrian Ward smartphone study. Adrian Ward is a researcher at the University of Texas. He designed a study where he had 3 cohorts of college students take very simple working memory and problem solving tests. And these are 2 parts of our brains that we use pretty much all day at work, right? And he had everybody with their phones off, but one of the cohorts had their phones off and completely outside the room, like out of sight, out of mind, out of the room, can't see it, can't touch it. One cohort had their phones off, but next to them in a bag or in a pocket. And the third cohort had their phones off, but in front of them on the desk. And just no phone at all. Just no buzzers, no rings, nothing. But seeing that phone that reminds the brain of distraction, compromised both working memory and problem solving. So just seeing the phone, both the cohort that could see their phones, their scores on both tests were lower than the scores of the other 2 cohorts, and the people who had their phones with them off, no buzzers, no lights, they had lower scores than the people who had their phones outside the room. But all of the cohorts took a survey when the whole thing was over, and they all reported performing at their highest cognitive level. So again, this thing happening outside our awareness. So here's a few more statistics updated for 2024. Do you guys know Asurion? Asurion it's a phone insurance and break fix company, and they insure and therefore monitor hundreds of thousands of phones across the US. So we're talking about an enormous data set. And according to their data set, the average American checks their smartphone 352 times per day. That's basically every 2 minutes. So even when it's not telling you to check it, you're going, right? And in surveys, 47% of Americans admit they're addicted to their phones. That's insane, because I do a lot of research. I do a lot of studying of addiction research, and most addiction research shows that people don't like to admit to addiction at all. They'll say, I overeat sometimes, I have a drinking problem. So to have almost half of the US being willing to admit, I think it's gotten pretty bad. Also, there was this study of children spending 4 hours or more on their smartphones. And these children, the cohort was age 7 to 16, and 66% of them spent 4 hours or more on their smartphones. So, oh, and by the way, did you know cell phones cause 20% of all car accidents? I know, terrifying. So we are living in this time where this little machine is the most defining experience of our lives. And how does it shape our lives? Well, it shapes our lives using this thing called a dopamine feedback loop. And basically, the dopamine feedback loop has this experience of intermittent reinforcement from sometimes getting dopamine and sometimes not. And that intermittent reinforcement loop from the dopamine feedback loop is the exact same process that drives heroin cravings for heroin addicts. So you're in good company, When we resist this urge, this is also something that I find fascinating. When we say to ourselves, you know what, I saw this presentation, Nora says I'm addicted to my phone. I believe her. I'm going to put my phone down. We actually, the brain naturally creates more cortisol, more adrenaline, and says something must be wrong, something must be terribly wrong. And so it actually drives us to have more of a craving to pick up the phone after we've made a decision to stop. And that's basically what an addiction is. It's not that you do it so much because it's fun. It's that not doing it is so painful that your experience tells you that you have to keep doing it. And I'm in 12-step recovery myself many years. So I've known plenty of people who got sober from alcohol. I always joke I was never cool enough to be an alcoholic. My first 12-step program was for food addiction, but I discovered that I was addicted to distraction. In 2006, I was losing about 6 hours a day to internet. And this was before social media. I didn't even have a smartphone. I was just fabulously addicted to distraction. I'm a trendsetter. What can I say? And I invented a recovery program for myself because there was none back then around this stuff. But because I had studied food addiction and I had to recover and go through the pain of food addiction, I had like a structure for it. And that helped me a ton. And so because I have a lot of friends in 12-step recovery, I know people in every program. I can tell you that I have friends in AA who say, you know, when we greet the newcomer, we say to the newcomer, you never have to drink again. Because that's what it feels like to have this addiction, to have any addiction, is this feeling of I have to, even if I don't want to. And so we'll talk about what first. Well, let me just stop. I just said a lot of scary stuff. Does anybody want to talk for a minute?
What hit you guys? Anything hit you, or was it just like, yep, yep?
It was a lot of yup, but something interesting. But when you started talking about the phone and the distraction of the phone, I was like, oh yeah, my phone. I checked my phone in that moment. Just the idea it prompted me. You could see the addiction there or the habit there. It's crazy.
Yeah. Well,
I did too. Yeah.
I did too.
Thank you. No, that's wonderful. Thank you so much for the honesty. Listen, ladies, here's the thing. It's almost like it's an unconscious experience. And that's what I think that's what most people don't understand about addiction. Because if you haven't lived through getting off something that you're addicted to in a very severe way, it sort of from the outside, it looks like someone who's just got a lot of problems, you know? But
Well, and I'm thinking about, I think, I'm not sure if everyone on the call is real estate teams because we have all kinds of entrepreneurial businesses that are part of our community, but I'm thinking in specific about real estate teams and other businesses where you have salespeople who are on the road who depend on their phone, not only for communication, but that's where their business is coming into them. That's where their leads are coming. They're, you know, am I responding fast enough? Did I get another lead? Do I need to follow up? Like that kind of stuff.
absolutely. And creating the structures that allow for those leads to come in and respond quickly is actually part of the magic of how we solve this. You can't just be like, you know what? Forget it. I don't need my phone for 6 hours a day. Not if you're in sales, not if you're in real estate. I completely empathize with how much real estate people really are running their businesses off their cell phones. Especially if they're out and about with clients and you know, hosting open houses, et cetera. So that's part of the magic is carving these pieces for focus and for inner peace that allow us to really show up for our obligations. So I'm glad you brought that up, Christy. So this is another thing. A 2022 study showed that when users set their smartphones to silent or do not disturb, they check their phones more frequently than when users had their phones on normal sound alerts. So just like you guys were talking about. So the kind
I'm
of
just curious how many of the people here, you guys can type in chat. How many of you have your phone set on silent all the time? I do. I'm just curious. You can just type a yes or a no in the chat. So we have a yes. I'm a yes. No.
I read this
So it's
study.
mixed.
For me, I read this study and I started putting my phone on loud every time I wasn't doing something really particular so that I wouldn't check it, so that I would be like, all right, well, when it wants to tell me something, it will. Unless I do carve out, I am one of these time plan people. So I do carve out time to just be doing nothing but the time thing. All right, let's do this. Okay. So your brain is tricking you. I mean, you guys all lovingly, beautifully, bravely admitted to the fact that your brain's tricked you today when I mentioned the cell phone. You were like, oh, okay. Make sure. And you know what? It thinks that doing that is good for you. And it is half correct. There are good things about the cell phone. And even the distraction, even like the urge for distraction itself is a really useful urge because there's an element of it that self-soothes. So whenever I do this work with people where I say we're gonna restructure how we relate to the phone, what I always do is I say we have to like look at it from that team perspective, not just the individual perspective. And we'll talk about that in a minute. And we're gonna assume that as we take away the self-soothe mechanism of the phone, at least for some of the day, there's gonna be a reveal of a need for more skill development. Because anytime we're soothing ourselves, we're actually soothing discomfort that contains information about opportunities for growing. And look, none of us can do any of this in perfection, or, you can't be like learning how to be a doctor at the same time you're learning how to be an astronaut, like we have to go, we're all lifelong learners, we all have skills to develop over time. But if we're gonna take on this transformation around our time, then we do have to get with the program around this idea that whatever it is that we're soothing, there's going to be an opportunity to develop better skills. Does that land for folks?
That's huge. That was I was about to say, can you say that again? That was the most important thing I felt like you've said so far today.
Yeah. And again, like you can map it well onto the 12-step community, because when people get off their drug, they're like, wow, I hate myself more than I ever knew. Right. And they're like, oh my God, there's so much I have to deal with now. And that's why there is such an emphasis, at least in the 12-step world, on this like personal progress, personal healing, making amends, going out and developing new skills. It's a very personal growth oriented community for that reason, because whenever we're picking up something that hurts us or that takes away emotion or sensation, inevitably we're going to discover, oh, that sensation is telling me something. And that also connects deeply with trauma. And in fact, that's the name of my third book, is Trauma and Money, because we have so many wonderful people writing about how trauma lives in the body. And Bessel van der Kolk has single-handedly, added trauma to our lexicon in this incredible way. But we actually self-soothe a lot of trauma symptoms with all these distractions. And it's actually a really beautiful access point for healing, not just skill building. So it can be a really beautiful opportunity. I hope I didn't scare everybody with my trauma talk, but the good news is also we're all healing some trauma, and it turns out we can actually have like a really nice sense of community around our skill building and around our, shared growth journey, which I love to see. I love to see how much people can grow together. So here's some pictures of a lot of different books you can buy and not see much of a change if you buy them and read them. Because the thing that drives me a little crazy about all of these books is that the only way that we really change this collective problem, this collective addiction. Please forgive me, guys, just 1 second.
I like what she's about to dive into because we have multiple people on the call who are or have been part of our coaching community. And I think you guys have experienced how change is easier in community than it is on your own, right? Which I think is what Nora's about to talk about. So sorry to interrupt. I know you
No,
have.
thank you for doing that. Thanks for covering for me. I had told the kids they were going to summer camp today, and they begged and begged and begged to stay home and just watch TV and have a quiet day. And so I said, yes, but I have this 3 o'clock talk. And you know, they get to be human
All
kids,
good. We're family friendly here at
right?
OpsBoss.
Yeah. Human children still around. So look, the way we do this has to include 2 parts. One is we have to do a team transformation around our relationship to time and distraction. And I'll talk about what some of that looks like in terms of the broad ingredients. But one of the things I'm a really big fan of is customizing for each and every team as we go, because it really is about having that sense of co-authorship and co-creation as teams discover how to completely alter their connection to this magic machine here. So that's one of the pieces. The other piece is that once you start relating to the whole society with the information that I've just given you, you never have to get upset with anyone ever again. I cannot tell you how many clients I have who call me annoyed. This person didn't respond to my email. This person was weird with me. This person, da, da, da. I said, you know what? I say this all the time. I say 99% chance this person is so burnt out, so overwhelmed, so not tracking their email, their text, their this, their that. They're so off their game because everyone is off their game, because everyone is barely tracking. If it's a 1% chance that this person is actually trying to torture you today, can you let that go just for today? And can you just have massive compassion for them? And it takes practice because, of course, our brains already feel stressed out, burnt out, cortisol, adrenaline. So our brains are actually looking for things to blame. We're looking for people to be mad at. It's so much harder to sit with the knowledge that our brains have been hacked and we have to do very uncomfortable things to undo the hack. So much harder to do that than to just let ourselves get upset, because the cortisol and the adrenaline also drives aggressive feeling inside of us. And so it's just very easy to look around and be like, you and you and you, and you didn't vote for the right person, and me, and you said the wrong thing on social media, and me. And polarization and social fragmentation is at an all-time high. And if you can be that person who's gentle and kind, and I have lines I give people, I'm like, try telling people, oh, I know you're so busy. Oh, I know life is so crazy these days, isn't it? Oh, don't worry about it. Hey, just emailing you one more time to make sure you saw it. So sorry if it got lost in your inbox, right? When you treat people that way, you will be one of the few people who does, and they will love you. They will feel like you are the nicest one of all the schmucks they have to deal with each day. You know, of all the schmucks. And they'll be like, that Christy, that Davina, that Kate, that Bethany, woof, I like her. Everybody else, woof, they can go fly a kite. Thoughts? Thoughts on this topic, and then we'll move on.
No, I love that because I think a lot of times it feels personal when people are not responding, not reacting, not giving you what you need, and it's not necessarily personal. It's just reality for many people.
I mean, just think about how everything I've said is true of every single person you deal with. People are trapped in this experience and they have no idea why they're trapped. They might have a sense. They might be like, oh, it's such a busy day. Everything's always busy and crazy and overwhelming. But they don't actually understand that there's like documented research about it. And they certainly don't know. I mean, I can't tell you how many people I talk to each day who just say, oh, Nora, I wish I could bring you in, but I think my executives are nuts. You know, honey, I need at least one more hour. I need at least one. You promised. You can stay in the bed, but you have to be so quiet. You promise? Okay. Good luck to all of us. Pray for me, you guys. See, now the interruption has made my brain compromise. So
Planned that just so we could see how the
I
brain
know.
works.
I know. Happens. So with tools that really get into this neuroscience piece, we can build neural pathways for entire teams to achieve major productivity gains. And I want to reiterate that change happens in a tribe. I want to offer you that maybe all growth happens in a good enough tribe, a good enough group of people who are connecting with each other and supporting each other. It's not about perfection. We're never going to be perfect. We're always going to have flaws. I have flaws. We all have flaws, but it's about having that good enough balance of people that are committed to a shared vision. And we can do really amazing things when we have that. And forgive me for bragging, but here's some of my happy case studies. Dave Edwards and his team at Heron Wealth quadrupled their sales in 6 months when we implemented a plan for him and his team around this. And good old Kristen Francis, they doubled their sales in 8 weeks. And I used to have another photo that actually showed the little 16 number. They were closing 8 deals a month, and I finished working with them in October, and in November, their closed deals were 16. So it was 8 deals a month and then 16 deals in November because of how much productivity they gained. And, it's also worth noting that when I started working with Kristen's team, most of them were working till midnight every night. And once we implemented a sort of a customized time plan, and it took us a process to do it, they were completely done and able to just zone out, turn off, not look at the phone after 7 p.m. almost all nights. So that was like really great to give them back 5 hours of their lives, Ooh, we have a chat. Yes, Kate. Kate says November is typically a slow month in Kristen's market. Wow, everybody knows everybody.
Kate's in the same market, yeah.
We're in the same market, yeah.
Sure. So, yep. Now you heard it here first. So what are these things that we do when we weave the strategies together? We teach people neural pathway building exercises. We have to have that group-wide commitment to focus transformation. That's a really big one. If we don't all have the same goal, we're not going to get there, right? But what's great about this goal is it's something we can all agree on. We don't have to agree on, chocolate versus vanilla. We don't have to agree on having 2 kids versus no kids versus 6 kids, but we can all agree that we want our time back, And so we have to implement and adapt that group time plan so that everybody feels like their needs are really met inside the time plan. And then we have to strengthen our influence and communication skills. That's what I find is the skill set that people are mostly discovering they need help with once they're not self-soothing with the distractions anymore. And the good news is I've been teaching a neuroscience-based way to understand human fear and human progress and, how to build influence and safety for people, and how to build progress for people for 15 years. So we've got that ready to go. Now, I know a lot of people go, what's this neural pathway building? I want to hear more about that. So I'll just give you a couple of the names of some of the exercises I've developed with different teams over the years. So you guys have probably heard of 3-minute bridge. It's one of my favorites. There's also a really important piece around giving ourselves opportunities to do scatter focus, where we just kind of like let the brain rest. And the brain can rest in a free-flowing, like meditative state. And it is also okay to let the brain do a little surfing in a way that's like not forever, right? Because that scatter focus can be really helpful for kind of like retuning things inside the brain. And I also really love when the opportunity presents itself. I really love to work with teams that are willing to create opportunities for scatter focus where the scatter focus is outdoors. The scatter focus is, a time for communication, a time for mentorship. It doesn't always have to be, oh, thank God I can go on TikTok now, because the truth is all that task switching that we do when we're on TikTok or Instagram or whatever isn't necessarily totally great for us. So, what else do I want to say about this? Focus, flow state.
Do you want to say, do you guys, I don't know if they know what 3-minute bridge is. I remember you talked about that last time, but I'm not sure that everyone listening remembers that, because I personally found that really helpful.
I love 3-minute bridge. So basically, I find that when it's time to put down distractions, what I want to get for folks is, I believe that inside of every time plan, unless we're dealing with someone whose job it is to serve as a receptionist, right? That we can pretty much carve out 2 to 3 2-hour blocks of focus flow state where you're just doing one thing at a time and you're just able to show up and really get the work done. And it happens really quickly compared to what our experience is today. And that's a huge ingredient in time plans, which I think there's the time plan structure. It's different for every team, but all the teams generally have all these ingredients. One of the most important ingredients in helping people actually access focus flow state, which is very hard to access at the beginning of this transformation, is putting this 3-minute bridge tool into their hands. And here's the 3-minute bridge tool. Your brain is so wired for distraction that it's going to create desire to pick up that phone for about 3 minutes at the beginning of your focus flow state block. So you're going to hear your brain go, what about this? What about that? What about this? What about that? The plumber, my mom, my husband, my teenage daughter. And every time you resist and you say, you know what? I told Nora, I'm just going to, like, I gave her this list of my priorities for the day. I gave her the things I want to get done in time block 1 and time block 2. I'm in time block 1. Told Nora, these are the only 3 things I'm going to do in time block 1. And I'm going to do task A until it's done, and then I'll do task B until it's done. So I'm on task A. I'm just going to do task A. And I find that it's different for different people, but for some folks, when they resist that urge and they say, thank you for sharing, brain. I told Nora I'm going to do task A. I'm doing task A. There's an extraordinary amount of discomfort that bubbles up. And that discomfort, I know from my own experience, when I created a distraction recovery plan for myself out of nothing, out of just like, I can't keep a job. I got fired from 3 jobs in 6 months. Like, I was just a nutcase. And I'm a magna cum laude graduate of Columbia University. Like, I'm super smart. I should be able to keep a job, and I just couldn't. And when I said, okay, I told my friend I wasn't going to do any distractions when I got to this first day of this new job, this is in January of 2007. For me, the first time I felt that discomfort, it felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. And I literally coughed to catch my breath. The pain was so acute. And what I was shocked by was that when I picked up the second task, because it was that task switching, that was the time when my brain went, check your email, see who loves you, right? And I said, no, I told my friend I wasn't going to. And it went, right? It only took about 3 minutes before the pain had lifted and I was busy absorbed in the next task. And then I taught it to hundreds of people over the next few years. And I learned that 3 minutes is the amount of time that it takes the brain to move from that discomfort, hypervigilance, like, what about this? What about this? What about this? What about this? To kind of dropping gently into focus flow state, where we have access to, instead of city driving with lots of stop and start, highway driving on cruise control, where you go a lot faster and you use a lot less fuel. So it's actually more fun and easier. And here's the crazy part. 2 things about the 3-minute bridge. 1, every time you actually distract yourself, every time you're like, I told Nora I wouldn't, but well, just one more time. Okay. The clock restarts. So you go from, okay, started at 9:01. I'm gonna be at peace by 9:04 to, oh, I interrupted at 9:02. So now I hope 9:05. Oh, I interrupted again. Oh, I interrupted again. I know people who spent 20 years interrupting their 3-minute bridge and being in a distracted state all the time. When you don't interrupt it, not only does it only take 3 minutes for your brain to drop from hypervigilance, scanning for the wild boar hiding in the bushes before I get into the, the reverie of harvesting the berries, because there really is a very real survival instinct behind all this, right? Not only does it take only 3 minutes, but very quickly, the more you practice it, within a few weeks, it won't be 3 minutes anymore. It'll be 2 minutes, and then 1 minute, and then 30 seconds, and then 15 seconds. And I haven't seen people get past the 3-minute bridge. I haven't seen them get past 15 seconds, but I'm willing to believe it's possible. Christy, did you want to add something about that?
No, I'm just nodding. I think 3-minute bridge was super, super helpful for me. Maintaining it is still a challenge because it's addiction.
Well, it's not just that, it's that our whole society has gotten worse, not better. It's a progressive illness across the society. So when I first gave this talk for you and your group, Christy, I think it was 2021. And there's just been this continued,
Acceleration.
yeah. And so what worked in 2021, you really do have to reinvent, because it's not just, it's great that 3-minute bridge worked for you in 2021, but I do think that nowadays it's very interesting. When I did this work with people in 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, some of them said, I get this. I can do it for myself, and, I'll work with my team when they need me. And nowadays it's so universal that if we don't implement something in a group way, the group itself will end up, unintentionally sabotaging themselves. So
this is why I want everyone who's on this call and everyone who's listening back to this call to invite the rest of your team to play this and listen to it, so that you can solve the problem and the challenge together.
Absolutely.
And just think what an incredible advantage your business could have by solving this problem. So we have about 10 minutes left, Nora. I don't want to take up your time. Let's keep going.
So I want to say a few things. The first is that, most people think that with this knowledge, they'll be able to solve it. And the sad part is that's not true. Even if you are listening to this right now and you are getting your whole team to watch this video and all of that, unfortunately, there are things happening outside of our awareness that will sabotage us. And so I really encourage you to get in contact with me. Go to simpsonstrategic.com. And I just really encourage you to get in contact with me. Even if you hire me, like most people, when we do this transformation, it's an 8 to 10 week transformation. But even if you hire me just for a couple of intensive workshops, I can help you guys see things you wouldn't otherwise see. And it's really easy to get seduced by this thing. Like, it's really easy for people who are at the super senior levels to say, well, no, those people are really distracted, but I'm not that distracted. I mean, I go to Starbucks, I do that. I got my systems, I do my thing. And it really takes like a very profound group commitment, and we can get through it together, and we do. And I want to show you something kind of cool, which is that, well, let me just go back a couple. So basically, one of the things that happens for folks is that this is a very uncomfortable transformation in the beginning. And that's not weird or crazy. We're living in a scary time. Climate change is real. Like, there's so much to be afraid of in our world, unfortunately. And it's very easy to get uncomfortable and to feel pain and fear. And as soon as you feel just enough discomfort, you will go to your easiest drug. And I mean, I'm working on writing about this in my book right now. And I wrote one line that was like, to pick up our phones on average 352 times a day. The most common addiction about 60 years ago was cigarettes, right? And then we all kind of figured out, oh, cigarettes are bad for us, right? Can you imagine smoking 300 cigarettes? I don't know anyone who can smoke 300 cigarettes. but we are so addicted to this thing. And so being able to be given tools that are going to land for us, because we each have different perceptions of safety, of threat, of progress, of inspiration, being able to get enough of what we need most to take us through the discomfort. It is, sweetheart. My 9-year-old is such a scholar. He goes, "Is the most common addiction now phone?" I'm like, "Yes, sweetie," you know. So discomfort, pain, fear, uncertainty, and doubt, and just the right information with just enough support, we can build ourselves that structure. And what we have to do is we have to kind of create it as we go, I find, for each team, because every team is different. Every team has different issues. Every person has different things telling them in their brain why they personally are an exception to this rule. Every single person. And some of those reasons are highly compelling. Christy, you may remember this case study point. I had a lady who worked on one of the teams I worked with, who had a teenage daughter who was suicidal. Do you remember this story? And she was like, "Nora, I am not gonna put my phone on silent, because if I do, what if my daughter's in trouble?" And I said, "No problem. I'm a parent too. I get it. We will make some special settings on your phone. Tell me everyone you need to hear from, no matter what. Your husband, your daughter's therapist, your daughter's school counselor, whoever it is. Okay, great. Those go on the list, right?" And phones are amazing these days. We really can set the settings so that it can be like do not disturb plus, right? So she would have these 4 numbers or these 6 numbers cut through, right? Once she did that, do you know how many times she actually received an emergency call? That's right. And that's going on like 6 years now. Like it was never, but her fear, right? Her fear of being a mother who wasn't there for her child, like that's such a compelling fear. Right? So we never want to dismiss people's resistance or discomfort or fear. Their fears are very real. But we do have to give them tools that will help them plug their discomfort, their pain, their fear, their doubt into a structure that will work for them. And then they can realize, wow, I really was addicted to my phone. It wasn't just about my daughter. But it's exhilarating to find out that you get to have your inner peace back, and you get to have your sense of sweetness of life back. I think it can be really special for people. So I would love to take the last 5 minutes for questions or discussion.
I want to bring up a question, which is, okay, if I'm listening to this back, I hear you, I feel you, I experience everything you're talking about. I'm ready to be uncomfortable, even though I'm scared. And my team isn't. Now what?
Well, what I like to do in those situations is I like to actually create, it depends on how big the team is, but I like to create an opportunity to get one-on-one with each person on the team. And if it's a 25-person team, we're going to have to charge for that. Right? We're going to we'll call it the team evaluation. And I have some really fun evaluation tools that, where if I do an interview with each person, it's I create a little document that where I'm not just getting into their world, I'm also getting to know like what their strengths are, what they're bringing to the team. And I've found that I have clients that are really excited to get those evaluations, because sometimes just having a pair of fresh eyes that's done a lot with a lot of different teams and a lot of different companies can be really revealing and have good information. So that's one option. If you're looking at a much smaller team, I'm happy to sit down one-on-one with each person and just get to know them and say, look, I want you to get more out of your life than you've been getting, because I know, without knowing you at all, I know what this is doing to our whole society, and I want you to have a better life.
And are there any options? So I know, for example, we have people on the call who are in various forms of coaching with us, and maybe they're in coaching with people on other teams. Their whole team isn't in coaching with us. Do you have any kind of options like that?
I do. I do. I have a couple of courses starting in the next couple of months. So simpsonstrategic.com, go to the website, get in touch with me. Nora at simpsonstrategic.com is my email address. Get in touch with me, ask me questions. I do one-on-one work, I do group courses. We have enormous capacity. It is my preference to work with as much of a group on the team as we can. You know, the other thing, Christy, is when we're dealing with real estate folks, oftentimes we have a kind of a concentric circle of team people, right? I'm sure you've seen this, right? You've got your core people, you know, your daily grinders, right? And then you've got your people who are maybe part-timers, right? And then you've got your people who kind of like, you know, send referrals here and there. So I am a big believer that we have to be really thoughtful before we jump in with a team to understand what their structure is, so that we're really doing the work with the people who are interacting with the time the most. And I love to create, you know, what we'll do is I have videos that I have people watch as part of their learning process, but we'll create Zoom videos like this where we actually make specialized recordings just for their team. And so if they've got part-timers, their part-timers can watch the videos. You know, we want people at whatever level they're at in the team, we want people to feel like they're kind of like, you know, in the boat with us. And another piece that I love to do is sometimes a real estate leader will actually invite me to give a talk for their clients around all these topics, because this topic doesn't just affect business owners, it affects every person that the business owner is affected by. And I always love giving this talk because I want to spread the good news that you don't have to be a slave to your phone, and you don't have to be a slave to this society-wide epidemic of distraction and burnout. And that makes a really big impact for that team leader to be able to say to their clients, we didn't just bring this lady to bring value to all of you. We brought this lady to teach us how to do our jobs better for all of you.
Love it. If you guys have questions, either feel free to come on mic or drop them in the chat. I just wanted to make one more comment before we answer any other questions, which is one of the reasons why I invited Nora back, not only because she was our most popular Coffee with Christy guest, is because one of our coaching clients hired her for their team. And this particular coaching client, now I will not give Nora 100% of the credit for this, but I know that it was instrumental. This particular coaching client has now, as of this month, replaced herself as director of operations on the team and is becoming chief of staff for multiple businesses because her team is so in unison that not only have they gotten their life back and become more productive and have more sales, but they're building other businesses together. And I thought that was such an incredible success story, because I know that our community is very growth oriented, and we also value all of the pieces of our lives, right? One of our philosophies is that we coach the whole person. And so I've watched her life get better, and I've watched their businesses get better. So I was like pretty stoked about that. So I just wanted to share that there. Did any of you guys have questions before? I want to be respectful of Nora's time, and we're hitting up against our limit here. Anybody else want to come on mic with any questions?
I can stay on a few minutes, Christy. So please don't feel bad if you think you're taking my time. It's my joy and pleasure to give it to you.
I'm curious when your book's going to come out.
Oh, the Trauma and Money book? Probably October. I'm hoping to have it in time for the Ops Boss retreat.
Awesome.
I just wanted to read you something, Christy, from that person that you got the testimonial from. She sent me a text about a week after we finished our work together, and I just wanted to read a portion of it. She says, I wanted to let you know we're at 11 contracts for the week, with at least 2 to 3 counter offers still out there. There's a chance we could hit 15 contracts this week, which would break the record for the most ever contracts in a single week in the history of the team. So that was the week after we finished our work and they had like everything moving and grooving. So, and I did work with them for several months. So it was just really rewarding to see, wow, this stuff, it just keeps working, you know?
Well, and I think what I see also in that is there are so many side benefits, right? The big attraction for many of the business owners is, yeah, I can double my sales. I would say you can probably more than double your sales with these productivity, all of the work that you're going to do. But also to have a team united around that one goal that will reap benefits in your personal life, reap benefits in your business, and working together through something that's really hard and then conquering it, like what that does for each person individually and what it does for you as a collective is really powerful. So,
Thank you, Christy.
anybody else have questions? Okay. Nora, thank you so much for sharing with
You're
us.
welcome so much.
We will
And
put all the links for all of your books, for your website in when we publish this. And you guys feel free to reach out to Nora. She's very accessible and responsive and just a lovely person. And I'm really, really grateful for your time today. Anything you want to close us with?
yeah, I just want to say that it's such a pleasure to watch people discover how much we all share, as we go through this growth process. Like, we all want to feel good on the inside. We're all tired of being burnt out and overwhelmed. And this overwhelm and burnout thing, it's so not any one person's fault. It's this whole cultural transformation that we've experienced with, tech and cell phones and like, hey, there's so many things that are wonderful about the cell phone, but these are the painful costs. And so if we can take ownership and responsibility as a group for how to change our relationship to that stuff, the opportunity for warmth and connection and just quality of life as we grow our business. I mean, that's the thing I love to share with folks, is that people think I like, if this were like 1720 or something, like I'd be burned at the stake as a witch, because who can help you make more money while shortening your workday, right? Like, aren't those things supposed to be opposite? Like, I love that I get to give people back their lives as they earn more and do better.
Thank you guys for joining us, and stay tuned. We do Coffee with Christy once a month. And if you want to access our previous Coffee with Christy, you can go to our YouTube channel at Ops Boss Coaching. And I hope you all have a great week.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, guys.